So while that case continues, this, of course, is not the first time these blue light brigades have been involved in either running someone off the road or being aggressive with members of the public. I'm joined now by Ian Cameron of community safety group Action Society. Thanks so much for joining us. You know, it was in 2011 that Thomas Ferreira was critically injured. He was on his motorbike in the Krugersdorp area. He was knocked off his bike by a driver who was driving for an MEC at the time. Thomas was in a coma for a very long time. The driver who hit him, in fact, I think ran through a traffic light or a red or a stop sign, didn't stop. But that driver was convicted. So now we're seeing this video coming out. I wonder, do you think anything has actually changed in terms of how these blue light drivers conduct themselves?
Unfortunately not. Thank you for having me. I think we've come to a point in South Africa where very little actually happens in terms of disciplinary processes inside the South African Police Service. The lack of comment and scrutiny from the state in this specific matter speaks for itself. Now, if you think of Thomas Ferreira's case, I'll never forget, I visited him 2 or 3 times in hospital after that incident, and I'll never forget the huge emotional loss, the trauma that family experienced from what happened to him. I mean, he's got permanent brain damage. So no matter the so-called remedies that are followed afterwards, nothing brings back that person. Now, in South Africa, in the broader sense with regards to VIP protectors, it's almost as though they are a law unto their own. We've got a problem on ground level with police, but with regards to VIP protectors, it's on a whole nother level. It's almost like senior politicians.
So we know that emergency vehicles can break the rules to some extent. You know, for example, an ambulance can, with caution, jump a red robot if they have a critical patient on board. And it seems that these blue light convoys operate under similar legal immunity. The National Road Traffic Act says, by law, motorists must give right-of-way to vehicles displaying emergency lights or sounding sirens. Do you think that these blue light convoys really qualify, though, under what the law says? Or do you think they do qualify and the law needs to change?
No, they definitely do not qualify. In fact, I think it's become more of a social status issue than what it really is a matter of protection. You know, it's almost as though the bigger the convoy, the more important you look and feel. I remember a few years ago, I had a meeting with the previous MEC of community safety in Gauteng, and she was almost 2 hours late for the meeting. And when she walked in, she was eating a muffin, and she said to me, "I'm so sorry I'm late. My protectors were stuck in traffic." I thought to myself, so I had to get up earlier to attend a meeting with you, but you had the audacity to be almost 2 hours late because of your so-called protectors. I really think the threat level to some of these political leaders is also doesn't qualify the amount of protection they enjoy. Now, I'm not saying no one should have any protection. I understand that there are certain positions in the state that have a certain risk, and I completely understand that sometimes it is needed to have a certain level of protection. But a specific threat assessment needs to be done to determine that level of protection. And at the moment, we basically see the abuse of blue lights instead of it actually being used as an emergency. And you know, the risk of this is that when there really is an emergency, people are going to stop responding.
That's a good point. The Ferreira family, after what happened to Thomas, they called for blue light convoys to be banned. Do you think that's a realistic call? Because you have just said that some protection, of course, has to be afforded to our VIPs.
So we've started a petition as Action Society to ask for the ban the blue light mafia, as we call them. And it's not to say that there shouldn't be any form of protection. We're saying that the current VIP unit needs to be disbanded completely. We say a new unit needs to be built up with the relevant integrity and ethics. And at the moment, no one is going to be able to regain trust from the public. And it's far more important for the public to have trust in those protectors, in my opinion, than what it is for certain politicians. Remember, and this is an important distinction to make, that these so-called public servants need to understand that they are there to serve the public and not the other way around. At the moment, it almost feels like we have to ask for favors just to make sure that the job gets done. They need to understand that we pay their salaries as taxpayers and they need to act as such. And at the moment, that's not happening. The footage right now on the screen of them being masked. Why do they get special treatment? It's only criminals that need to hide their faces. If they're not criminals, there's no reason for them to hide their identity.
It was very interesting a couple of days ago on Monday when one of the suspects actually was called to speak during the bail hearing by his defense team. And he said, we believe there was a real threat to the deputy president. This blue car had been flagged as potentially dangerous. But the video afterwards and the level of force, our reporter Heidi Jacobs pointed out that the man they were kicking was already unconscious. Stopping a car that you think is a threat, arresting the people that you think are threatening is one thing. What is it that has led to the sense of we can do what we like? Because I know that if there's a blue light convoy behind me, they get right close to me, and I'm absolutely terrified that I'm not going to pull over quickly enough. And I think a lot of motorists feel this way.
So I think there's a few things to take from that specific cop that spoke in court. Now, first of all, it was shocking to see how badly he speaks. And it goes to, for us, not in terms of his accent or language, but in terms of his knowledge to be able to testify in court. He not only contradicted himself several times, but the things that he said eventually confirmed that everyone eventually knew that Paul Mashatile was part of the convoy, something that just before he spoke was said to not be able to be revealed. Nevertheless, it makes me question the level of training, the level of depth in these units. Are these simply political appointments? Does it go with favors? How professional are these units really? And that leads me to the comment that you made about them approaching you on a road. I don't feel safe, and I'm a male. Maybe I'm with a group of colleagues that are also men. I don't feel comfortable with that. Now, let's for 1 second play devil's advocate and say there was a threat. Nothing seems right that if you've got 7 vehicles, more or less, in a convoy, an armed convoy, why would 4 unarmed people in a little blue polo try and do something to the convoy? I mean, that's suicidal. It doesn't make any sense. And then, just in terms of the way they approached the scene, tactically, it was wrong. The way they handled their firearms, they actually posed a risk to each other, never mind the victims. The victim that was unconscious is the one that we are representing. They hit him with a rifle. He already lost consciousness inside the vehicle, and they damaged the vehicle. So there are so many things that I can rip them apart on in court. So I really think that these cops have a lot of introspection to do, and so do the management of the South African Police Service. And if it weren't for civil society, and thank goodness for the media, these 8 men would not have seen the inside of a court.
Tell us, how is this person who was assaulted doing? We know that they were rendered unconscious. My understanding is he was hit with the butt of a rifle. How is he, and what is he telling you about that event?
Yeah, I had a disturbing contact from him or discussion with him in the last 48 hours. Saying that the anxiety and the mental stress really is taking a toll, which wasn't actually so bad. I mean, there was shock in the beginning, but there really is an influence in terms of that. With the butt of the rifle, they actually hit him between his ear and his jaw. So he's really struggling for his jaw to heal properly. It's very painful. He can't open his mouth the whole way, can't bite properly. So it is very uncomfortable. And then also just in terms of intimidation in the South African National Defence Force, it's also a problem. I mean, the SANDF tried to intercept the medical report, the J88, and luckily we were able to intercept that before they could. They wanted military police to take that in order for them to supposedly give it to IPID. So there was no support from the SANDF, no counselling, nothing offered by the state up to this point.
I need to just understand, why is the SANDF involved?
So the victims all work for the SANDF. They are members of
I
the
see.
SANDF, and the driver of the vehicle is a permanent member, whereas the other three that were in the vehicle are all still trainees. And that's why they suddenly said that no one is allowed to speak to the media. They actually contradicted their own internal policy. And when our legal team spoke to this general at one of the bases in Pretoria, the general said, I don't care if it's right or wrong. They are not speaking to the media. I have made my decision. And then after that, the medical report side happened, where the military police said that they are taking the medical report. The victim is not allowed to have his own medical report. And then our team managed to intercept that before, in order for it to make sure that we know what was written on there, because we were scared that they would alter something or somehow try and influence the process. So it really hasn't been that the state came forward and said, how can we help innocent victims? It almost felt like they wanted for this thing just to go away. Let's cover up what happened.
Sorry, before you go, I just have to ask, we've heard in the report put together by my colleague Pulile Chweti-Jones that the NPA is concerned that one of their witnesses is being intimidated. Are you able to confirm if it's your client, or are you not able to speak about that?
No, I can tell you it's not our client. And we try and look after them as best we can. And we've got a very strong, and my client, I must say, I must really applaud him. Him and many of his colleagues have just said, we will speak, we are fearless, this is wrong, and we will not sit back, even though there is this mental toll. I think the specific person being intimidated is likely some of those that shared it on social media, as well as the lady that filmed the altercation.
Well, Ian Cameron, thank you so much for speaking to us. Some really interesting insights there into the victims in that video, the blue light video. Ian Cameron, of course, is from Action Society.